all the years of human evolution, George and Jack have evolved into something utterly unique and spectacular. It is no wonder that their show, The Patriot Think Tank, sits so high in the talk show food chain.
Hey.
That was funny, George.
So for those that don't know, that was a gift for Jack, so to speak, a reminiscent gift between us. That was I think it was our first episode. We used that, right? It was the first one, or maybe the second, but I think it was the first.
I think it was the first, yeah.
Yeah, so
the first and only.
Yeah, but it was trippy, and we got a kick out of it. And I pulled up the old files, so I redid it and was like, let's use it. So welcome everybody once again. We are back. I see Gerard Evan is already blowing up the chat on Facebook. We are live to Twitch, Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube. So whichever platform you're on, before we get started, click the like, share the conversation, do it early so people can get in on the conversation while it's still live, and also make sure that you're clicking that like button so that we can help this broadcast get distributed. And Jack, I know you put out the video earlier this week regarding the well, there were a few things there, but one of them was one that I was actually going to do before I fell ill, was the Wisconsin court ruling on 2,000 mules, but because I think 2,000 mules is what sparked it. And I know both of us were saying when it first came out, you first were like, this needs to get done locally. And fortunately, it looks like in Yuma County, for starters, it's getting done. They went after in city of San Luis, that one whistleblower. They ended up arresting a few people there. I think I have the names. It was it Guillermina Fuentes and Alma Juarez, who were both involved in the elections, were both arrested, or both were charged and then pleaded. I was a little upset with the plea. I want jail time for these people, at least initially, to set the stage. But it does appear that across the board, we're starting to get some leaks. We're starting to get some pigeons in these mules. These mules are growing wings and starting to sing like pigeons. And then we got this Wisconsin situation, which really is the first step that all of these states should be taking, where they just acknowledge like what the court did. I mean, they called the election illegitimate, which is what went to the headlines. And they did actually call the election illegitimate, which was interesting because normally you won't hear that type of stuff come out of, come out of a court. But in essence, I mean, the way that it was worded and the way that they said it was right. He basically said the right to, this is a quote from the opinion. The right to vote presupposes the rule of law governing elections. If elections are conducted outside the law, people have not conferred their consent on the government. Such elections are unlawful and their results are illegitimate. So he didn't specifically say that election was illegitimate, but he did, because he said that the election was unlawful, and then went on to quote John Adams saying that it's illegitimate. Then goes on to quote John Adams here. So if an election can be procured by a party through artifice or corruption, the government may be the choice of a party for its own ends, not of the nation or for the national good. That was an actual John Adams quote in the opinion. And he says, the Wisconsin voters' injury, in fact, is substantially more concrete than the remote injuries we have recognized sufficient in the past. The record indicates hundreds of ballot drop boxes have been set up in the past elections, prompted by memos. And this is where the crux of it is that all of it started, all of these ballot boxes, they are against the law in Wisconsin. And this is where finally it's nice to see that there's actually a judge out there with some cojones who's willing to call it what it is, because that's what happened in all of those states, is that it was against the law what they did, and it was all through executive prowess that they changed these laws. And every one of those states, that's illegal. And he basically just called him out on that and said thousands of votes have been cast via this unlawful method. He's only talking about Wisconsin though, but he says thereby directly harming Wisconsin voters. The illegality of these drop boxes weakens the people's faith in the election, produce an outcome reflective of their will. The Wisconsin voters and all lawful voters are injured when the institution charged with administering Wisconsin elections does not follow the law, leaving the results in question. So he says it clearly right there, and I think it was clear from day one. And I'm going to hand it to you right now. I just wanted to say that, like, the fact that no one would hear this initially, because these cases were being brought right there in 2020, and including our beloved conservative Supreme Court punted, all of them punted, and at the time it should have been decided, they all punted. And that's what drove me mad. And it's nice to see that they're making a decision right now. At least better late than never, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, and I can't speak for the U.S. Supreme Court. I do know the Supreme Court in Wisconsin. What they did that was unique there is the voters, two guys, or two people. I don't know if they were guys. Two people went and they tried to get the lawsuit going, and they were shot down by the local courts. And they said they didn't have any standing because it doesn't affect them, right? And so they didn't stop there. But that's what's happened in many of these states is the smaller courts are throwing these out on standing, and they're not even looking at any of the evidence. And so these guys went, they took it further. They appealed. They went through the appeals process, went to the Supreme Court for Wisconsin, and that Supreme Court judge said, wait a minute, these people are absolutely impacted by this,
right?
And this case has to be heard. And I think that's what, for me, was most interesting, because hopefully he set a precedent to where other folks in other states can now start going through that appeals process and rolling it up higher. And that then gets all the evidence that's been accumulated, it gets it in front of a judge. The evidence has been there. It's just nobody would hear it. So
that's all anyone was asking.
Yeah, at least listen to the evidence, right? But nobody wanted to. So we got a lot of things happening, around the country that I'm real pleased about. I was reading a report by Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch. He's suing New York right now, George.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that in your video where you were saying that, which is not, that's a witty lawsuit. So if people don't know what that is, why don't you fill them in case they didn't see your video earlier?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, under New York State, their Supreme Court, under their ruling, you have to make a reasonable effort to purge your voter rolls. And it's been established that the voter rolls haven't been addressed in over 6 years. So through a FOIA Act, the Freedom of Information Act, Judicial Watch went after those records and sued for the records because they wouldn't turn them over to begin with. And he sued for the records. And, the expectation is that they're going to be able to purge these rolls. He's been able to purge the voter rolls in North Carolina. He purged, just in LA alone, 1.5 million people. I mean, that's ridiculous, but so you have so many people that are registered that are dead, they've moved, and they're still sitting there sending out ballots. So when we go to this mail-in ballot, you have millions of people that are getting ballots. Well, you know what? If they know what's going on, if somebody's tracking what's going on, and these ballots are just going to end up in a dumpster, then you might be able to massage that and have some of those ballots returned, right? That are filled out.
Yeah, I just the whole thing to me, like, honestly, like, it's such an like it's so archaic the way that they're going about this ballot stuffing and this ballot harvesting. It's
Hmm.
so archaic and basic in its implementation that it's like to me this is an easy thing. Like it's like I have to think that people are in on this when they turn around and say there's no security cameras at all these there's supposed to be one at every ballot box. There's not. Like, how hard is it to investigate the person who's responsible for making sure that the security cameras are set up at those drop boxes?
Right.
And these are not hard things to. You don't need Perry Mason on this. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like let's call in Columbo. Like Gomer Pyle could handle this. You know what I mean? Like Ralph Furley could or whatever. What was his name? And I mean, they can handle this, right? This is not top dog, investigative work. But yet here we are, and we still can't quite figure this out. Like how is it not a no brainer to get rid of drop boxes after you see the data from 2,000 mules? How hard is it for you to have your sheriff take control and determine who the mules are and start interviewing people and get to the bottom of this? Like this now, I look, I'm not a sheriff, so I don't know, maybe there are more investigations going on than I know of, so I'll leave that to be. But like, we should have seen some sort of action by now. Like the fact that Yuma County has some action, right? Like they're still ongoing with an investigation and whatnot, but we at least know that they're on it. Like we at least know that they're, they handed out some subpoenas. They took some people in. They handed out some search warrants. They're moving, right? Like why is that not happening everywhere? Like in most of these states, we're about to get right back into November, and this mail-in voting and Dropbox nonsense in crucial states in this country. Like I don't care that California solidified its mail-in voting. Like until someone's going to investigate California for fraud, which is not going to happen for a long time. But whenever that happens, we're going to learn a whole lot about how California became the epicenter of leftist thought. I don't care. I don't care that Massachusetts is going to do that. Like these are states that they're already in that they're meaningless because they're already fixed. You already know where they're going. Like if Texas even, well, Texas they would try to turn blue with it, right? But it's the same concept where if you know where a state is going to go and their issues they're so in the tank one way that it's not even a big deal. I don't care. I care about Wisconsin. I care about Pennsylvania. I care about these states, Georgia. These are states that are pivotal. And if you know you're running one of those states, how do you not take this more serious?
Yeah,
I don't understand it.
George, and you're looking at it from a very big picture standpoint, but I want to bring it down just one level. So when I was dealing with Bobby Piton over in Chicago, who was running for Senate, and he's a Republican, he experienced voter fraud. Let's just say, in his opinion, all right, he was experiencing voter fraud, but it's coming from other Republicans in the primary. So this is not just Democrats. These are politicians across the board that are taking
Absolutely.
advantage of this. So, and I just want to make that clear. This is
The first guy that True the Vote took down was a Republican, right?
over in South Carolina. He was a.
And you think that's it? You think that it's like there's Republicans who are in on this too, so they're like they're holding it up in some of these states as well? Like,
No, yeah,
that might be the case. That could very
yeah,
well be the case.
yep.
Like we need
So,
all of them need to be hung. Like all of them need to be friggin' brought to justice. Every one of them. I don't care if
well,
it's red or blue. Clearly there's something wrong.
and they're finding things like in Chicago. They got had a judge step down. Whether he got arrested or not, I don't know. But he had to certify a particular area within Illinois, and he intentionally changed the voting statistics because he had to certify the machines. So he had to certify the machines, and when he certified them, they were incorrect. Now, how they proved this, I don't recall. And if somebody wants to question me on it, I'll go back
What
and
state
give you.
was it?
It was in Illinois.
Oh,
Yeah.
because they did
So
something like that in Massachusetts. That's what Dr. Shiva's lawsuit was. He's the first one with these machines to like start showing all the discrepancies and issues that they had. And then Giuliani tried to pick up on his information because he was doing it totally separate. And then his lawsuit turned into the whole Twitter thing and the collusion with the government and whatever. But originally it was about the machines, and that's
yeah,
when he realized, because he's got 4 degrees from MIT, and he's watching what's going on, and he's like, how can I? It's mathematically impossible for me to lose by the same percentage in every single county that's counted by machine, and then in the one that's hand counted, I kill it. Like I'm like I blow it away. He's
right,
like, how could that be? So he started looking at it from strictly a mathematical perspective, and that's how he realized that these machines were counting fractions of votes or adding another vote or doing all kinds of wackadoo stuff. But like, we don't even need to get into the machines.
right.
Yeah, but no, you know what? Yes, we do, because frankly, these because these states are going to have Dominion machines again.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, yeah, you bet.
Like what that? Like how incompetent can you be?
Well, it's. I don't think it has anything to do with incompetence. I think it has. I think it has to do with there are powers that want it this way, and
Well, you know what? You're right. You're right. Like when I say incompetence, I mean blatant or like, in your face
overt.
about this whole. Like it's
Yeah,
so it's like they look at us like we're just friggin' idiots. Like whatever, just keep bringing the Dominion machines again. No problems. No problems. Like they're not good. They'll bark, they'll yell a little bit, you know, they'll squabble a little bit, but so what? Then it'll be over, and we'll get our people in, and we'll put the Republicans in here, and we'll put the Democrats in there. Maybe we'll switch up this state a little bit because we got to keep that gridlock going so that we could all keep arguing, and which honestly should have been the telltale sign years and years and years ago, about how this game is getting played. Like the idea, I've always said this, and I know it to be true. I don't know anybody who votes one way at the top of the ticket and completely different down the rest of the ticket. Like I don't know one human being, and I'm sure there's one out there, but I don't know anyone in my life who shows up and clicks D at the top and R all the way down, or R at the top and D all the way down. Like, but yet somehow we keep ending up with these gridlocked Congresses all the time. Constantly, we end up with these gridlocked Congresses. Like we get this, we get a president who wins a state, but everybody else in his party loses, or vice versa, or what? Like clearly this is not normal. Right? And when you listen to pundits talk about it over the years, they talk about it like it is normal. And bizarrely, instead of investigating it, they point to history and say, not deep history, right? They're not pointing to the 17, 18, 19, and early 1900s. It starts at the early 1900s. And they just say, well, this happens all the time down, look at how many times in history this has happened. And it's like, instead of thinking, shoot, maybe this has been going on, a lot longer than we think. It's like, no, the fact that it's always been this way means that it's legitimate. And it's just like, even though it makes no freaking common sense. Like nobody who knows, please, someone leave in the comments if you know more, even one. You know what? Let's just keep it at one. Because somebody will comment. If you know one person who mixes up the ticket all the way down the line and votes for one party as the president, and then vote somebody else all the way. It's like, I'm going to vote for my interests here, and then I'm going to vote against all my interests here. Or vice versa. I'm going to vote against my interest up here, and then I'm going to vote for my interest all underneath. Like, who does that? Who does that? It makes no sense. Yet always we have these tight races and mixed things, and we always end up with what? An inept Congress. We always end up with a Congress that's in gridlock and does nothing. All the time. No matter who's president. They're always up against it with Congress, and sometimes they'll give them to. And the fact that it always, if they ever do get everything, number one, they never get a supermajority in the Senate ever. Okay, so they never get the 60 votes ever. So so now they get the narrative with the 51, 52, but nothing gets done because it really requires 60. So it's like, or it just gets filibustered to death. So like, they give you that illusion almost that like, yeah, look, you got the majority, you got the Congress, you got the presidency, you got everything. And it's like, no, I don't have everything because nothing gets done here because 51 votes are meaningless. Like without 60, it's meaningless. And somehow, magically, no one ever gets to 60. Ever. Ever. Like law of averages, just at some point. Like someone would have tripped over something and hit the different lever and turned the tides and like something would have happened. But it never, ever happens. And the more I learn about our election process, the more, look, so here's Sherry. She said, not everything is a nefarious conspiracy. You're absolutely right, Sherry. It's not. And I'm not even saying that this is a conspiracy. What I'm saying is no one will even investigate this. Like, I'm not even saying that this larger thing that I'm talking about is happening. What I'm saying is that no one will even look at it. It's not crazy talk, is my point. It's not crazy talk. We know that ballot harvesting is going on. That's fact. That's not like, wow, where'd you get that information from? Well, we had 2000 Mules was showing cell phone ping data. I can tell you that's dead accurate. Don't let these schmucks tell you that it's not accurate. It's dead accurate. Dead accurate. And if it's combined with cell phone towers and satellite, you're talking within a meter.
Yeah.
Like it's extremely accurate. It's used. They wanted to use it for social distancing. Just keep that in mind. That's 6 feet. Right? So look, in the end, it doesn't mean that that's all going on. What I'm saying to the bigger point is that it's clearly somebody should be suspicious and look into it. If someone would come out and just say, hey, I looked into this, right? And here's how it works. And here's why. And it sounded reasonable, I'd be like, okay. But instead, everyone pretends it doesn't happen. And that's what drives me nuts. Because clearly, there are issues with our elections. Clearly. Like, if you don't believe that at this point, you're just in denial. Like, there are clearly issues with the elections.
Well, one of the things that we've always said, even from the beginning, is question everything, right? And that's on both sides. It's not just Republican, or Democrat. You got to question both sides, because when all is said and done, you have lifetime politicians that are leading the charge, and there is a lot of incentive for them to gain power, and for themselves, for their family. And the fact of the matter is that if we don't stand up and question things, regardless of the narrative, or we allow ourselves to be browbeat, oh, don't say that. It's off limits, right? If you say that, you're a wacko.
And gaslighting that goes
on. Yeah. And when they start making things off limits and people then become concerned about speaking up and questioning things,
then all of a sudden they start calling you Alex Jones, you're crazy, you're this, you're that. And I'm like, and even on that fact, like Alex Jones has been right. It's not like he's always wrong. Like he's been wrong, but he's been right too. Like the fact of the matter is, you need to be able to pay attention when someone's right. And just because they're wrong on other things doesn't mean they're wrong on this thing. And if something seems questionable, you have to ask the question. You can't. And I'm sure Sherry wasn't gaslighting me, right? but I'm joking, Sherry. But at the same time, like, you have to be able to ask these questions, and there have to be, and really where the fall here is, where the real fall from grace is the fall of journalism. Like, that's where the real fall from grace is, because no one in mainstream, like no one, it doesn't occur to anybody to friggin', it doesn't occur to anybody to look into anything. Like they all think, like they're so the media is so gaslit by the government. It's outrageous. Like they think they have these sources as if those sources are not like pumping your head full of crap. They've been doing that they've publicly talked about doing that for decades. But like they all think that, I just talked to and they'll give you some official title and be like, and he said, it's like,
Yeah. Well, the other part, George, and I know we've talked about this before, but I just want to encourage anybody that's watching, look into the Smith-Mundt Act of 2012. And so and the reason I bring that up, what it does is it gives the government the right to lie to us. Now, I'm boiling it down by saying that. You have to really look into it and read it. But it was something that was used to influence other countries. So if we wanted to influence other countries, we would release, certain propaganda. That's always been illegal in the United States until 2012 with the Smith-Mundt Act. So the reason I'm talking about it is when you say the folks that are a part of a news agency, when they think they have these sources in the government and they're like, oh, we have the inside information. Well, the government is now allowed to lie to media.
what is it? How do you spell it?
Smith-Mundt Act.
Smith
MUNDHT.
Modernization Act?
Yeah. Yep.
I'm going to drop it in the comments is why I'm asking you.
Yeah, drop it in there because there's a lot more to read in there. Like I said, I'm just going at it and boiling it down to saying, hey, they're allowed to lie to us, which is basically what they can do. All right.
Right. Here's Raymond Schuman says, so I have many questions about the 2020 election, but the one that really bothers me is how it's possible for Joe Biden to get more votes in several, I think he means counties, in a few states than there were registered voters. It's impossible to get more than 100%, but Joe got 190%, 150%. It's impossible. So there's a lot of things on the mathematical side of stuff that don't make sense to me. At least not when you compare it to the narrative. When you compare it to the narrative, it's that everyone hated Donald Trump and that brought out the Democratic base to go and vote in mass, and just they go crazy and give him more votes than by far than any president's ever gotten in history. Now, if it were a candidate that was like, a fiery candidate who, like even Bernie Sanders would be easier to believe.
JFK. Let's use JFK, right?
Yeah, whoever. But
right.
I'm just trying to pick someone from today. But yeah, you're right. Like even if it were like a JFK or something, then it would be like, okay, maybe. You know what I mean? Like, but in the end, even if it were JFK, like the other side of what kills that argument is that if that were the case, then you would think that Trump would get less votes in the second time around than he got the first time.
Right.
But not only did he get more votes, he got more votes in his second election than the first, more than any president in the history of this nation. So that's not even a population increase number where they're like, oh, the most votes or whatever. This is a situation of this is how many more you got the second. He got 10 million more. Like you can't make the argument that the hatred was so great for him that because 10 million more people came, he's the only president to ever lose with one more vote than his previous run. Like no one has ever gotten more votes in their second term than their first and lost. He not only got it, but he got more than anyone in history, and by far, like it's not even close. And then you got to wrap your head around who Joe Biden is and what his campaign was like, and the fact that it was clear to anyone who was trying to be objective in any way that this man did not have his wits about him. And it's clear right now that that's the case too. It's clear. I mean, obviously, as the days go by, you watch him get lost at the G7 summit, and Jill has to come and grab him and point him in the right direction to where all the world freaking leaders are. Like it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing watching him. And I said this last week. I feel bad for him on that front because, like, there's a special place in hell for Jill Biden. There's a special place in hell for her, because this is all about her at this point. Like, if she wanted to put an end to this, she can put an end to this. But she's enjoying that White House, and she thinks it's a long time coming. She married this guy probably to get in there, and the fact of the matter is she ain't letting it slip away. She don't care where his mental capacity is.
You know, I know you said you feel sorry for him, but I'll say again, I feel no pity for the man. You know, I recently watched a video of him maybe 20 years back, and there he was saying that if you have 1 gram of crack, then you're going to go to jail for 5 years. And he's just banging on that piece and banging on that piece and very proud about it, right? And then you see the information that's been released from his son's cell phone where he has, you know, I forget how many grams, and it's all on video. And the guy has always been duplicitous. He was a racist. He's duplicitous.
I'm not saying I feel bad for him because he's a good human being. I'm just saying, look, it to me, like I said, it's kind of like bashing a dead guy. Like Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away. I had nothing negative to say about Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she passed away. I have plenty of disagreements about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her philosophy in the court and the whole nine. I can go on for 3 shows. I could do a freaking miniseries on it. But in the end, it's when she's dead, she's dead. And like, to me, yeah, he's not dead, but it's like holy crap. Like, yeah, like he's like walking around. I mean, when you see him, you know what I mean? It's clear that he doesn't know where he is half the time.
Yeah.
Like, there are these moments that he has where, like, and then there'll be a moment where he kind of has it together, and then he loses it. He just like starts trying to shake hands with nobody and doing weird stuff. And it's like, clearly it's not like he's the head of a small business and this is wrong. You know, he's the president, he's the leader of the free freaking world. And every leader in the world knows that this man is not of his faculties. Like, they all know that there are nefarious people running this country right now. They all know that. There's not a world leader out there that doesn't know that.
He's the best thing that could have happened to us since we lost, right? The presidency. He's the best thing that could have happened. Because
from a convention of states perspective, yes.
Yeah, from a convention of states perspective, everybody is taking, look, this is a real wake-up call. And anybody that doesn't, you know, anybody that's not watching closely what's going on, or even watching from a distance, you have to recognize that the Democratic Party is being run right now by a very socialist, with a very socialist agenda.
It's Marxist. They are straight Marxists. Enough of them say it that they don't like socialism doesn't even give the full description. They're straight Marxists. And it's not, you know, I've said this a million times too. It's not every Democratic voter. That's why there's support for convention of states from Democratic voters. But when it gets into the hands of the politicians, it becomes a partisan issue. When the media reports on it, it becomes a partisan issue. You know, look, Pennsylvania is going to pop any you know, some point in the next month or two. And when that happens, all right, now I'm hopeful, all right, based on some of the buzz and things like that, that we can pull this off in Pennsylvania. That'll be a big deal, right? Ohio, I'm almost confident in, but Pennsylvania would be a huge deal, if we could pull this off in Pennsylvania. And you know, once this snowball starts, that's going to put us at 20, and then there's going to be, you know, you look at Ohio, maybe 21, you know, and like realistically, we're thinking 22. That's what that was Meckler's number. Looks like he's more right than I was. That's shocker there. But he looks like he was more right than I was and what his expectation was. But like in the end, all right, so 22, you got Pennsylvania, what did I say, Ohio? Right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So once it hits that 20 to 21, 22 threshold, you're gonna start to see the media go on full assault. Like people aren't hearing about this anywhere but from us and from COS, and from COS Action, conventionofstates.com. That's where you're hearing about this movement. That's it. If something big breaks, when all 4 of those states came on this year in the beginning of the year, it was straight fire. How many people, millions of people didn't know about it? Whole
Yeah.
states didn't even know that it was going on. The media
I'm
just
kind of
blocked it out.
surprised. You know what I'm surprised about is that you have a lot of support for convention of states by some high-level influencers, and I'm surprised that they're not at least reporting on some of the updates. You know, they've all did their little speech on it and so forth,
Right,
and Prager
right.
put out a video.
The
But
Shapiro's and all that. Like,
right, and I don't see them jumping out like it's a news story, right? And
because they're not seeing it like we do. That's why.
yeah,
Like they see it as a good thing. They see it as something we should do. But in the back of their head, they're like, whatever, I got a show to run. I need new topics. We're going to talk about Biden falling off his bike today. And
right.
and that's what's going to happen. Right.
Yeah, it's unfortunate
Whereas
because
like, I just scratch my head and I'm just saying, I mean, Levin talks about it quite a bit.
yeah,
Levin is out there. Like now mind you, he wrote a book on this and it's a bigger deal to him. But I say to myself, why is it bigger to him? Like why is it not that big to everybody? Once I realized what this was, and here's Camila Diaz. Nobody at this point can plead ignorance. This is beyond a circus. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Camila. It's like literally cue the circus music. But as we go through this cause movement and as we try to educate people, I guess is the best way to say it. Like, there's no excuse for when we learned about this, we knew right away that like even before I fully validated it and like did the historical reading and like went through Madison's notes and went through, like even before I did all that, my initial instinct was like, if this is serious, this is a game changer. Like this is it. Like this is as close. There's no silver bullet, right? But this is as close to that as there is, because it's not about the term limits and the government overreach and the fiscal restraints. Those are all huge. Those are all sweeping changes. Like those changes, if all 3 of those amendments get ratified, we're talking 250 years. People are going to be talking about this generation and the positive change, like when it all began, right? Like when the illusion ended and when America really became America. And that's going to go on and progress forever. But it's not even that the changes are that big, because there'll still be issues out there to deal with. What it is it's that precedent, right? It's that, that, all right, we figured out the procedures. Now, we already know the procedures, but now you've gotten to all the people saying it's going to go wild and it's going to become this and that. Like those people are no more. Those people are no longer relevant. We don't have to. That's no longer. Imagine taking that argument off the table. Now think about how powerful that would be, right? And even when Scalia said it, like he was like, I just want to see it get done once. I actually queued that clip up better than I did last time. This is where I agree with Antonin Scalia 110%.
All of these reasons have created this feeling, which is real and which I think has a proper basis, of powerlessness. One remedy for that, the one specifically provided in the Constitution, is this amendment process which bypasses the Congress. I would like to see that amendment process used just once at first. I don't much care what it's used for the first time. I think just having it used once will exert an enormous influence upon both the Congress and the Supreme Court, I think. I think we'll get the parameters established of how you do it, what can be done, and I think after that the Congress and the court...
He's 100% right. right?
Mhm. Without
After
a
that,
doubt.
he's like, I think the Congress and the courts will behave much better. The Congress
Yeah.
president, because it puts them on notice, right? It puts them on notice and tells them, like, look, you are not you're not the ultimate in control here. Like, careful with these mandates and with this stuff. Like, careful, because we can go ahead and just freaking flip this whole thing over on you. Like, if we have to, we'll turn the whole thing upside down. You know what I mean? Like, we'll just take all your freaking power and be like, you can run the military and that's it. And like, and you're not allowed to touch anything else. Like, if it ever, but it wouldn't be necessary, because when you
Right.
pass the first three, it would pass any of them. And they just know that you can do that. They correct themselves. You don't have to, after, I mean, we have to do one. Like, we can't let this turn into, we get to 33 and then they try to put in term limits and put in some fiscal restraints that are going to get, wishy-washy, and like 2,000-page bills that are talking about, how they're going to save money. Like, we can't let that happen. The first one has to go through, because we're beyond, you can't say you're sorry now, right? I guess that's my point. Like, we're past
Right.
sorry. Like, there's punishment that's necessary, and that punishment is restraints. And those handcuffs are going to be put on, and once they're on, that's that many less people. That's that much less intrusion from the government that a free people have to worry about. And the most important part about that, if all three pass, forget the Klaus Schwabs and these doodadoos in friggin' in Davos. They ain't gonna matter anymore. There's going to
Right.
be a bunch of rich coconuts meeting and drinking fruit drinks and friggin', hanging out and acting like they're all cool, but they ain't changing a damn thing in the United States. And I guarantee you that becomes contagious, and Europe, in particular the UK, because they're always the ones that throw up the middle finger at these freaks. Like they'll be the ones that turn around and go, you know what, US, good job. We're in too. Screw all of you. And start taking people out, right? Start voting people out and making changes, just like they did with Brexit, just like they did when they wanted them to go for the euro, and they were like, hell no, right? That's where the impact, that's the long lasting impact of the Convention of States is. It's not in the fiscal restraints or the term limits. It's in the idea that the government is now in check, and you no longer have these doodadoos running around like the John Birch Society and Publius Hulda and these coconuts who are just bastardizing the freaking American history in trying to act like we're too irresponsible to govern ourselves. Like, those people no longer matter. They no longer have a leg to stand on. They're done, and now there are zero arguments against Convention of States. And that's, once that happens, we all know how the process works. It's solidified. There's no more drama. The American people win for centuries. We win.
Yeah. I mean, it's so simple to me. I just think to myself, who would I rather have make a decision for me? Nancy Pelosi or myself, right? Now,
John Birch Society would rather have Nancy Pelosi make it for you.
yeah. Well, maybe if she's going to select the type of ice cream, right? Her and Joe can pick ice cream all day long.
I don't even have faith in her in that arena.
I don't know. She's got a $12,000 refrigerator for her ice cream, but
Yeah,
sounds pretty fancy. She must have some
that
good
doesn't
ice
mean
cream.
the ice cream in it is any good.
Yeah.
So we got one from Robert here. We the people are the only ones that could change things. Cause the only way. No federal influence. When state politicians go to Washington, even the ones you support, they get swallowed by the swamp. That's absolutely correct.
Mhm.
And that's the point, that you can't elect yourself out of tyranny. Like, you can't, and this was one of Meckler's many cool quotes where he basically said, what was it? He was like, anyway, he was making the point that the government is structurally broken. I forget the exact quote, but the point is, and if you don't know the history there, Meckler was one of the founders of the Tea Party movement. And one of the reasons got on board with this was because when they got all these people elected through the Tea Party, which I thought, the strategic process of the Tea Party to go after primaries, I thought was genius. Like, I thought it was genius because everyone sleeps on the primaries. And it's like, it's not just about, putting Republicans in office. It's about putting the ones that you want in office, and not being stuck with Mitch McConnell running, and you're in Kentucky and now you got to pull the R, and now you just voted for Mitch McConnell, like, because you don't want a Democrat. It's about getting the Mitch McConnell beforehand and getting him out, and put the guy, when you go in there to pull all the zombies walk in and pull their R's, that they're pulling them for people that are good, right? But then they all got in, like one of the things Meckler said is like they all got elected, and then what? Now he's like almost immediately they all went to crap, almost immediately, because it's like you just imagine like someone, you give them a pair of snowshoes and they walk out in the snow and there's just an avalanche coming at them. That's what happens to the people you elect, whether you like them or not, because the government is structurally broken. And there's no one you can vote for. I mean, Trump wanted to make change. He was going to war with all these people. Everyone hated him. Everyone. Republicans hate. That's why I started to like him, because I was like, I mean, I like Trump as a civilian most of my life, but in the end, when it came to the presidency, I was skeptical. But when I realized how many Republicans how many of the right Republicans didn't like him, like when I saw the Mitt Romneys and the Mitch McConnells and those guys, and they didn't like him, I was like, this guy's got to be onto something. This guy's got to be onto something, because those are the bad guys, right? So when the bad guys don't like somebody, you immediately start to think this must be a good guy, because the bad guys don't like him. Like, there's no argument that Mitch McConnell's a good guy, right?
All right. I wouldn't argue it.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the end, here's what I would love to see, just to keep on Trump for 1 second while I'm on the topic. If Trump were to just turn around and support convention of states, like, he would fulfill all of his narcissistic dreams. He would fulfill what he wants. Like, the only thing he cares about is his legacy. Now, I ain't saying he doesn't love the country or anything like that, but first and foremost is his legacy. And I already knew that, but it was demonstrated clearly when he came out talking about how wonderful the vaccine was, because he knows that he was Mr. Operation Warp Speed. And even though I think he did that with good intention, like, he's not an epidemiologist. And if you're the person, it's one thing to be a civilian and say, I'm going to hold off and wait. If you're the person in charge and responsible for those lives, and you have people that you think are experts coming up to you saying, dude, millions are going to die if you don't. Well, then, all right, then he did what you would do if you believe that, But afterwards, would he come out and go, "That's what happened"? No, he's just, afterwards, he's still like, there are zero apologies even when he's wrong, right? So it's like, nope, it's the greatest invention. I mean, it was amazing. We made historical time with it. It's awesome. You shouldn't have to take it, no, but it's awesome. It's great. And I was just like, come on, dude. I mean, I blow it off because I already know how Trump is, but if he were to just take that same narcissism and think about, if he were to turn around and get behind convention of states, now, with Trump, it's like, who gets to him first, right? Is it the John Birch Society doo-doo-doos and the Publius holders and these coconuts? Or is it, is it some rational people who actually understand history and aren't fear-mongered into an opinion?
Well, do you really want Trump touting convention of states at this point? Because if he did,
we'd be calling it in about 6 months.
You think so?
Absolutely. There's not a part of me that doesn't believe that.
And
because his base is so rabid that if you get that kind of action going on at a local level, I'm telling you right now, it would go nuts. It would go, if it wasn't 6 months, it would be one more local election cycle before it happened, because they would galvanize, storm these elections, and start voting people out like crazy that weren't on board.
Okay. All right. I just didn't. So the other thing that I was thinking is, that's the surest way to get this put out on CNN and MSNBC in a very negative manner. So the opposition would grow tremendously. But I see your point, and I think that
the opposition, the irrational opposition against Trump, would never do anything. They hate the Constitution in general.
Right.
Like and these are the irrational ones. This is not just people who didn't vote for Trump. These are the real coconuts. When you're talking about something totally different, and they're like, "Well, Trump did it." You're just like, "What? What are you talking about? Trump has nothing to do with this conversation." But Trump and Trumpity Trump, 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 and Trump and Trump. You're just
Right.
like those people. Those are the
Right.
people that would go nuts, and those people hate the country and hate the Constitution anyway. So it's like, you know what? Screw those people. Like I said,
Yeah.
there are Americans and there are Marxists. Those are the Marxists. Like the people who've lost their minds and are irrational and are like, they think, men can get pregnant, and those people, like, they're gone. We can't save those people. And they hate the
Right.
country anyway. So whatever. They're not large in number. And that's what people need to realize. Those people are not large in number. It looks like there are more of them than there are, because
Yeah.
they've got the school, they've got the education system, they've got the media,
They've
they've got
the media,
Hollywood.
that's the big one.
Right.
Yeah.
So it looks like they're all over the place. But
Yeah.
you look at those shots, you look at those panorama shots at the January 6th thing, man. There were easily millions that showed up at that friggin'. I compared some of the shots that they were showing in the Capital Punishment documentary. I was comparing some of those shots to like major events, right? Like Martin Luther King's speech, because it's a shot where it goes, they show you the vanishing point, and like it's no different. It's no different in number. It's no different at all. And these are all freaking. These are not all militants. These are senior citizens, and like everyone was like our age and older. Not everyone, but like a
Right.
large amount of the crowd. They were all colors, all creeds, all everything. All get praying, freaking doing all that. If he were to get behind this, dude, I'm telling you, like, I'm cautious about it, because if the Publius Holders and the John Birches get to him first, it could work the other way around. And now he'd be out there being a force, essentially lining up with evil. So I hope that never happens. But at the same time, if he really they'll be talking about Donald Trump right now. They'll be talking like 200 years from now. There'll be a blip about him in the history books. There's a lot of crap going to happen in the next 200 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not going to be. It's all big deal now. It ain't going to be that big deal then. He goes ahead and pushes this convention of states through, and it passes. They'll be talking about him for 250 years.
Yeah.
Easy. There'll statues. There'll be the whole
Well,
night.
I'll tell you what, George. Let's get on a plane. Let's go camp out in front of the gates of Mar-a-Lago with a big sign that says, "I want to speak to Donald."
Yeah. I'll try and find the old board game I have that my mom bought me.
Yeah, I'll bring my guitar. We could sing.
Yeah.
All right.
Real,
Well, it's 9:20.
he could be that big of an impact.
Yeah, no, he definitely could. It's 9:27. Do we have any questions? That anything lighting up in the chat?
Yeah, we got about 13 people, I think, across the channels on right now. So if anybody has, and I mean, a lot of the times we end up with people like our following already knows about Convention of States. But if there's anyone who doesn't understand Convention of States, and this whole conversation might be confusing you, and you're still here trying to figure out what exactly it is that we're talking about. So Convention of States is in Article 5 of our Constitution. It outlines how you can amend the U.S. Constitution. There are two ways to do it. One has always been done, throughout history, and that's Congress, 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate. They propose amendments, pass them. Well, they don't pass. They pass the language, and then they hand it to the states. And then the states, 3/4 of the given states, several states, have to ratify it. Well, there's another method of doing it that doesn't involve the federal government whatsoever, and that method is the calling of a convention of states. So instead of 2/3 of the House and Senate, it's 2/3 of the states.
State.
So 34 states in this situation that need to pass resolutions on topics that they want to call a convention for. And basically, once those resolutions are passed, they hand them in, and they give them to the Secretary of State, which brings me, actually, we forgot to even blow that guy up in Wisconsin. So they give them to the Secretary of States, who are then beholden to pass those resolutions on to Congress. Wisconsin right now has passed a resolution, and they have their Secretary of State is literally violating the U.S. Constitution by hanging on to it. He's the only one of the 19 that's doing that, but he's currently in direct violation of the U.S. Constitution by not submitting that resolution. I'm not saying he never will. I'm just saying he hasn't done it yet, and it's been a long time. So it's months now, and he hasn't done it. So, but the point is, once the Secretary of State, the responsible ones that gave it to Congress, Congress then shall call the convention. So Congress doesn't get a say. They don't get no one wants to hear what they have to say. It's just they shall call the convention. The states will select delegates, send them to convention. They can select as many delegates per state that they want, one vote per state. Okay, one vote per state. So it's not an electoral college thing. Everybody convenes, delegates all agree. A simple majority can agree on the language of the amendments, and then they bring that back to the states. All 50 states get to participate, even though it's 34 that call the convention. So California and New York, you can bet they'll be there with their doo-doo-doos, trying to make problems and cause confusion and create issues, but it won't matter because 26 states are needed to approve the language in the amendments. The topics are written in the resolutions by the states. Right now, this one is term limits for all federal officials, not just elected. It's also fiscal restraints. Think balanced budget amendment, maybe repealing the 16th Amendment, which was income tax, and then government overreach. So with government overreach, think of Marxism being taken out of schools because the government no longer has any authority to be involved with schooling whatsoever. Department of Education taken down, OSHA on a state level only. President loses all of his regulatory agencies as his tentacles to get around Congress, right? So if 38 states ratify, those things go into effect and they become a part of our Constitution. And we then live in an America where the federal government is mandated to balance the budget every year. Modern monetary theory becomes garbage. All of that stuff becomes junk. Scott Morris says, sorry, I jumped in late to make a stimulating and thought-provoking question. Did I miss the question? All right, what's the thought-provoking question? Scott, go ahead and hit us with it. Now, I don't know if you're a peek and peck typer, but I'll sit back. We see it come up. I'll put it up there and go ahead and ask it. But yeah, so, but I mean, in the end, look, the Constitution's been getting rewritten for how long now, right? By the Supreme Court. We've got justices. I brought this up the other day with the Second Amendment decision. We got 3 justices on the court right now who believe that the Second Amendment, that the Constitution is a living document, right? A living document. What is this? Oh, he said there wasn't one.
Oh.
He said you asked if there was one to be asked, and there wasn't one. Yeah, it didn't sound like it. So I just went ahead and just gave a quick description for anyone who sees this after the fact of what the convention is, how it works. If you do have questions, if things are popping into your head about, well, what if this happens or what if that happens? Hit me with it. Hit me with it. I am as well read on this as anyone out there, maybe outside of Meckler himself and a few others, but I'm as well read on it as just about anybody you're going to find when it comes to the scenario situation and what happens with this and what happens if that happens. Like, I got this thing dialed in. I'll tear down I've done videos tearing down the argument against it. There's only one, and it's that the convention will run away, and that all of a sudden, when the delegates get selected, somehow they take on magical powers and now can just never come back and just redo the Constitution and say that, you know what, we don't want you to ratify it. We wrote in here that you don't ratify anymore. Now the president does, and just never come back. And then somehow the states are going to all listen to that. That's their argument. It's so insane. It's almost as crazy as men having babies or thinking that the 2020 election was the most secure election in the history of America. It's like right in there with those categories, right? So in the end, that is what it is. But that's the convention of states. So we're going to be on every Wednesday. So every Wednesday, if you come up with questions during the week or something like that, you could always comment or text, or not text us, but you can comment, or info@thepatriotthinktank.com from our website. There's a contact us. You can do any of that, and we will certainly get back to you. Probably the easiest way is to comment. I'm pretty active on the comments on all platforms. Well, I'm most active on the comments on Facebook and YouTube once the video has surpassed. And that's because I get alerts for those, and Rumble doesn't tell me anything. And I don't even know if you can comment on Rumble, because I've never seen one, and people have told me they can't. I see it open. It looks like you can comment, but I have it open right now. But I only see comments come into Rumble after the fact. So, but whatever. I mean, if you comment on Rumble, eventually I will get to it, because I do go through that stuff, and we will answer your questions. Or you can come on live Wednesday nights, 5:30. Whatever topics we discuss initially, we will flip it to convention of states at the end, and just have another conversation on COS, because there are just that many people that don't really understand how it works. And this is so powerful. It's such a powerful tool that it just kills me that there are people that don't know how it works. So with that being said, Jack, you got anything?
No, I'm good. I mean, if I say anything at all, when you say it, it surprises you that people don't know about convention of states. Well, that's why we're here, right? That's where we dedicate the bulk of our effort. So,
yeah, and of course, look, follow the channel, subscribe. We do discuss other topics, right? But at the same time, we do try to keep the one constant theme about this broadcast is that it's really about convention of states. Like, we'll talk about things like we did today. We may have conversations about inflation. We had conversations about Margaret Thatcher, Margaret Sanger, and Planned Parenthood. Big difference there. We have those types of conversations as well. If you're subscribing on YouTube, make sure you click the bell. That's where you'll get the alert. YouTube, there's no guarantee if you just subscribe that you'll be alerted on stuff. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. My own mother doesn't get alerted with sometimes on YouTube when I go, and I could, just so you know, we actually do get along. So like, she actually does like me, and so, but she even doesn't get alerts sometimes when I go on. So click that bell. That's how you guarantee that's going to happen. Other than that, I don't see any more comments or questions, so we're going to call it a day. Jack, we're out.
George, goodbye.
And like that,